Welcome to Power Apps Session 4. The goal of today's app session is for us to come up with a way to sort our data, to see the records of where students are located, also to delete some of our records, and have also the more advanced feature towards the end of this is where we make up a pop-up confirmation screen saying, hey, are you sure you really want to delete this? So let's just get right on in it. If you haven't been following with us for the first 3 sessions, you might want to take a look below for the links to those videos, or if you're just along for the ride to get a few quick tips, welcome. So where we ended up last time is on our galleries. We had the galleries here which were able to be searchable based on what we typed into our search command. And if we take a look, right now we have all of these and it's pre-formatted based on Power Apps. They're doing it alphabetically based on name. So if I search for a grade, level, or if I search for a person, let's say Jay's, I have Jack, anything with J in it, so Deja, Jack, Jacob, etc. But what if we want things to be sorted a specific way? Well, it's pretty easy to do. We're going to select our gallery, and we're going to keep this search function here, but now we want to have all of this data coming back to be sorted. So I'm going to put in front of search the word sort, so another function. Let's take a look at our roadmap. Our roadmap says, give me a source to sort. So all of these results are going to be the source. And then how do you want it sorted when it comes back? Well, let's say we want it by, let's say we're going to go by the grade level. And we want it to be, let me zoom out now so we can catch up. And we want it to be ascending. So I'm doing grade ascending. I'm going to change this in just a second, but just to show you the way this works. I'm going to close that out. And we're going to bring this in, and let's see what, I might have something wrong in this one. Let me come back over here. Something didn't pick up in my IntelliSense. So I'm going to sort this out by grade. All right. And then I want it to be ascending. And I'm going to put in my parentheses to close it out. And right now, I got J's, but now look at what has happened. Anything that has the letter J, the grade level is going from 6 to 8. And let's test out another one. Let's put anything with the letter M in it. So these both have the letter M in it, and it's being done by the grade level. All right, it's being done in ascending. Now, would you really probably do that? I doubt it. That's not going to be the best way. And if we clear out everything, notice here, all the 6th graders, then all the 7th, and all the 8th, because we don't have anything being searched on. It's all the results. So let's make this probably what is going to make more sense for our users. Let's change the grade to name. So we're going to sort this by name. All right, I like that. It looks pretty good. So again, I'll put that code up here. Again, if you need to take a look at it, pause the video. We should be good. Now, the next thing that we want to do, we're pretty much done with this first screen. We need a second screen to actually, when I click on Charlie, I see where Charlie has actually been checked in. So the way that we put a new screen in is very simple. You're going to go to the Insert ribbon at the top, click on New Screen, and we're going to go with a blank one. The minute it puts this in, it gives us a really awful name, Screen 1. Let's change this. I'm going to call this SCR for Screen, Student Location. And we're going to go from there. And now we probably want to make the background very similar to our first one, the fill color. So the fill color of our first screen was this RGBA code. I'm just going to quickly copy that out. This is completely up to you if you want to put in a new fill color, keep it white, and there we go. Now normally we would start adding the header and say what the screen is for, but we'll keep that for after the video. I can do some cleanup and you can do that on your own as well. But let's get into the meat and potatoes. What I want is to see all the locations of my student that I've selected. Well, that is in a data table, so we're going to go and do what we did on this first one. We're going to put in a gallery, because I want us to be able to function with the gallery, actually use it and interact with it. So I'm at the Insert ribbon, over here on Gallery, and I'm going to go to Vertical, and it's going to say, what do you want? Do you want the student info or the student location? Because remember, we made these connections in the app at the very beginning on Session 1 or Session 2, I believe, Session 2. So I want the student location. So I'm going to click on student location. And if you're like, oh, I made a mistake, well, over here on the right, where it says data source with the gallery selected, you can change it back to student info if you wanted to, which obviously we don't. And then I'm going to change it back to student location. So it's very easy to make a quick change of what data is in a gallery. So I'm going to have this take up the majority of over here. So what do we have at this point? Well, we've got a gallery. So remember, this is row 1 of the student location. This is row 2, and it's pulling back a few of the data values from our columns. Well, one thing is we don't need the image. So I'm going to come over to layout and change the image from image title and subtitle to just title and subtitle. Okay, now let's take a look at what we've got. Well, better, but I want the first part to be the actual name of the patient, or not the patient, the student. So if I want to change how all these records show, I have to change it in the first row because it's the template row. So I'm going to click on the staying for half of lunch, and look what it's giving me. It's giving me the values that were in the additional comments column, which I don't want to see that right now. So what I want to see instead is I want to see the actual name of the student. So I'm going to refer to the column that has their name in it, which is name. Perfect. So now this is the student name. Well, underneath, if I click on it, it says, hey, you're pulling back the value that's in the created by column. Well, this time I want that to be the additional column. Let's do the location. Let's get the location that they are in. All right. And for intents and purposes, you can bring in whatever you want, but to help this make more sense so we can see the dates, I'd like to know what date they were checked in on. And what I see here is I don't have enough room. So I'm going to click on the whole first row. So nothing selected except the template cell. I'm going to drag it down a little bit. As you see, that does it to everybody else as well. So I'm going to take Mr. Peterson's room. I like the way it's formatted, so I'm just going to do a copy and a paste. Bring it down. You see everything adjusts based on it. But instead of the same thing, instead of location, let's get the date. So now let's pull in for this record the data that is in the check-in date. I think it's called, check-in date and time. Fantastic. Now there's a few things we could do to make this a little bit better so our end user isn't confused. Maybe they need to know that this is the actual location. So I'm going to do some hard coding here. Now, it's not hard coding. It's just that it's going to hard code some information into this problem. So with Mr. Peterson's room selected, I want the words location to be in front. So I'm going to come to here, and I'm going to put text in. So whenever we want to put a text string in, we put it in double quotes. And I'm simply going to type location, let me spell it right, colon, space, but it's not working because these are two different formulas. This is hard-coded text string, and this is a this item formula. So we have to put the ampersand. We want to smush them together. And voila, location, Mr. Peterson's room. Maybe for the next one, for the date, I'm going to do the same thing, but instead, I'm going to double quote and put in my check-in date and time. I just check-in date. And again, because I have two separate formulas that need to be put together, I have to concatenate them. And it looks like we're in business. And if you want to put the comments here as well, that's completely up to you. You have free range. And what I mean by free range, if I come over here, let me get rid of this. Once I do the dot, these are all the columns that you are allowed to pull in that are in your data source. So you pick the one that you want. So again, I wanted the check-in date and time, but you can make this the best way that you see fit. So, what do we do after this? Well, now I need a way to get from the first screen to the second screen. So let's take a look at how we can add some action to our navigation buttons. So with our buttons, we want to get again to this gallery. So I'm going to come up to our main screen. We've got this nice little icon here, so if we could just wire this icon up to do the action, that would be perfect. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to click on our little chevron icon in the first row. And right now, on select, which is the property for what happens when you select, there's nothing here. So the easiest way to navigate is we click on the action ribbon, We then click navigate, and then we tell it what screen do we want it to go to. And we'll go to the student location screen. You pick whatever kind of transition you want, so I'll go with, we'll just keep it with a fade. That's fine enough. So let's test. Let me click down here for Jacob D. And perfect. Kind of. It took us to the second screen, but it didn't do what we want, because I only want to see the records for Jacob. So let's fix that. So how do we fix it? Well, the first thing I'm going to do, I noticed that I need to do some cleaning up to make it look a little bit better. I'm going to take Gallery 2, and I'm going to change the fill color to white so it's a little bit easier to see, so it's not completely washed out with the rest of the screen. And so now we got a little bit more clarification there. The second thing is Gallery 2 is an awful name. Let's change this to Gal Student Location. Alright, so now it's looking a little bit better. So what we want, when we click on Jacob or Macarius or whoever, we only want to see their records. So the items that we're looking at, we want them to be only for the specific child. So how do we fix that? With the gallery selected, the property we go to is items. Just like we did that for the Gal Browse students, but we had the items refer to that search bar. This time we're going to do something a little bit different. We're not going to use the search command because we don't want to actually have to search for people up here. We want these results to be filtered based on what we selected. So we only want to, if we selected Jacob, we want only Jacob's records. So these records are filtered. Who are we going to let in? We're only letting in Jacob. So we're going to put in a filter command. So we say, hey, I need to filter these results down. So give me the source, which we did. How do you want them filtered? Well, I only want to see when the name of the patient, of the student record, matches the name of the student info table, because in both tables there's a name column. So when those two things match up, that should be perfect. That's the filter. If this equals this, bring it back. So we're going to type in name, because name is in our student location field, or student location table. When that is equal to the name of the other table, student info, we're good. Here's the issue though. Where did we get that name from? Well, we got it by clicking on it in the gallery. So we need Power Apps to look at this gallery for us. So I'm going to put Gal Browse Students. So it says, okay, I'm looking at that gallery. What do you want from that gallery? Well, I want the student that I selected. So we're going to do .selected. Okay, well, when you do that, that's a whole record. That is all the columns associated with your selection. So that's all 10 columns. Which column do you really want me to look at? Well, I want you to look at the name column, so .name. And now, let's see if we're in business. We should, look, we're only seeing Jacob. Because when we selected that record, in the gallery, which was right here, so when I selected record 4, it referenced the name of record 4, which in this case was Jacob. And then it said, okay, only for this student location table, you're only allowed to bring the records where Jacob is equal to Jacob, which is what we have here. So we are cooking. We've got this filtered down. We could sort this by dates, which we'll do in the next video, but for now, to keep the video shorter, we're going to go straight to the next key part. The next thing we want to do is be able to delete a record. All right, so let's say we want to delete this record for Jacob. Someone put it in wrong, or we don't need it anymore. We want to delete this from the source. So the way we do that, first we'd want an icon that's going to help us do it. So I'm going to change this little right chevron icon. I'm going to come over here to the icon in the properties pane on the right. I can come over here and change it from the right icon. And I'm going to change, I think there's a trash icon in here. There it is. You pick whatever you want. But now this kind of means delete. So if you want to delete, it's very simple. We're going to say, okay, this whole data set right here, Jacob D. Nurse's office, if somebody clicks the trash, well, nothing happens. Because if it looked, the onSelect property is just set as select parent, which is basically nothing is happening. It's the default property that is set for the onSelect. So we will code that instead with a very simple code. It is remove. It'd be easier if it was delete, but it's actually remove. It's going to say, well, where do I remove this from? Well, this record right here is from our student location table. So student location. So that's where you're going to remove it from. And then it's going to say, well, which item am I supposed to remove? Because there could be 1 or 1,000,000. Well, we want this one that we want to remove. So it's great. We use the function this item. We close it off. Let's test it out. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key to test. So instead of going into the full preview mode, I'm just going to hold Alt and mouse selected. And in a second, this should now be gone. And it is. Everything is working perfectly. But there is a little issue with this. What if you don't trust the people and you want them to have like a pop-up screen where they have to confirm, are you really sure you want to delete this record? And you can start thinking about where you might use a pop-up or confirmation screen in one of your own apps. And so that's what we're going to do next. Now the way we do this is going to have quite a few steps, and at first it might not make sense of why we're doing what we are, but at the end it will completely make sense. So I do apologize if you give it the full 5 minutes or so, and I'll summarize everything completely up to make sure it all comes together for you. But the first step in this is we're going to have to actually make a new, we're going to have a pop-up come out. And I don't want to make it go to a brand new screen. Instead, I want it to be right here on this screen itself. So I'm going to overlay basically a new screen on top, which is pretty easy. So the way we do that is we're going to go to the Insert ribbon, and I'm going to put in the very simple icon that we've used before, and which is our rectangle. So it's about 7/8 of the way down. I'm going to click on rectangle. I want this to take up the whole screen. Okay, so now I'm not going, wait, this is not going to work because how are we ever going to see this or see what's behind it? Don't worry, you're going to find out. So the first thing I'm going to do is change this color because I know I don't want to use blue. So I'm going to go to the fill color, and maybe I'll go with one of those greens that we had. So JWJ, let's see what the secondary looks like. That's pretty good. Okay, all right. But what I'm thinking is that when I'm looking at this screen, I want to be able to see through it because I want to see what's behind here. That's like kind of what a pop-up screen does. If we're going to have it take up the whole screen, we still want to be able to see through it. And so this brings us to another topic. So it has a little bit of review. When we put in a color, there's 4 numbers, red, green, blue, and then this A thing. Well, what does the A stand for? The A stands for how translucent or transparent, or you could say what's the thickness of the shade, so to speak. So let me show you that real quick. I'm going to go look at this variable that we stored. And the way we go back to look at variables, we go to View, we click on Variables, and here's that JWJ secondary. And at the very end, there's this 1. And the 1 means you're seeing 100% of the color. You're seeing all of it. No light can get through there. You can't see through it. So what I want to do is I want to see through this a little bit. So I'm going to use this, but I'm going to change the 1 at the end. So I'm going to come over here. So I'm going back to the fill color. And now I can't use the variable because I got to actually change it. So 7, 180, 8, and 1 I think was the original. Okay. Now let's change that 1 to like a 0.4. And let's see what happens. See, now we're getting to see through it just a little bit. So I like that. The 0.4 looks good. All right. And so this rectangle 1, this is really going to be my pop-up screen. That's what I want to call this. So I'm going to rename rectangle 1. I'm going to just go RCT, the pop-up screen. And it's going to even be more specific. Let me get rid of that. Pop-up confirmation. Pop-up confirmation. All right, I like that. So now what else do we need to put on this pop-up confirmation? So I'm going to want to put some text over here of what we want this screen to show to people. So I'm going to insert a label, and it's going to tell them, like, hey, when they see the screen, what's going to happen? What do we want them to see? And I'm just going to go with something, are you sure you want to delete this record? Okay, we can make that as big as we want, so let me do it quick. We'll make this really big. I'll put it like 40 font. Actually, let's go 50 font, and we'll make that bigger so it, holds the whole thing. We'll make it bold. And you can do whatever you want with this as well, but that looks pretty good for me. I'll put it down here. And then there's going to be two options, yes or no. So we're going to put in two buttons, one to say yes and have an action tied to it, and one for no. So I'm going to go insert, let's do a button, bring it down here, and we're going to go with the first one. I'll say yes. Then I'm just going to simply do a copy paste, Control C, Control V, paste that over, yes, and the other one will be no. And then with these, I can change the colors of my buttons. So if I click the button yes, and we go to the home and we go to the fill, we can change these fill colors to however we want. So yes is probably good. I'm okay with that. No, maybe I'll do a red for no. All right, but you make it look however you want. This isn't going to be the prettiest right now. I'm going to fix all the nice, pretty colors once we're done with the video. All right, so do you want to delete this record? Yes, no. Everything is looking good. But now here comes the part. Obviously, we don't want to see this screen all the time. We only want to see this screen if somebody tries to delete a record. So in order to do that, we're going to change the visibility properties. When the visibility property of something is, so I'm going to select this yes button. I'm going to go down to visible. If I change visible, right now it's true. If I change it to false, it's gone. And if I change it to true, it's there. So whenever you put something on an app, it's automatically true. Well, we want this to change based off of other selections, from true to false, true to false. And we want the buttons, this are you sure you want to delete, and the whole screen to all change based on that. So what we're going to do is, to have them all do it at the same time to make our code much quicker, I'm going to select the pop-up confirmation. I'm going to select, and actually, you know what, let's change these button names. So button 1, that's the no button. So I'm going to change that to button no. And this one is the yes button, because this will help us a little bit later as well. So button yes. And I don't care about the label 1. But I'm going to control select all of these, because I want all of these to show up and disappear at the exact same time. So I'm going to group them all together, which means when I change the properties, it changes for all 4 of them. Okay? So what I need is for group 1, I need for visible, I need there to be some kind of variable that changes from true to false, true to false. Well, I don't have any variables for this screen. I have variables for the entire app, but I only want this variable for this screen itself. And so we're going to come up with a new formula now. So that formula to declare a variable is called update context. And I only want this variable to occur when somebody actually navigates to the second screen. So for the second screen, we have this property called onVisible, which says, hey, the minute this screen becomes visible, it does this action. And so this is the action I want it to do. This is called update context, which is used to start off declaring your very first variable for a screen. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to give it a name. I like to use var, and I'm going to call it the show popup. And then from there, when I do this, if I want to update the context, the problem is I don't have a var show popup, so I can't update context if no record's been created. So I'm going to create a record. And the way we create records is after a parentheses, you put in your fancy bracket. What a fancy bracket allows you to do is to make a temporary record in the background. And so it's going to be var show popup, and that record is going to be, so I'm going to do a colon, it's going to equal the word false. And I'm going to explain why I'm using false to start with. And I'm going to close it with another fancy bracket, and then with an actual parentheses. So this is going to be what the initial variable is set to. It is going to be set to false. Now with that being said, var show popup is false. I'm going to come over to group 1, and for visible, instead of it being true, I'm going to say it's equal to that variable that we just made. And if we think about it, that variable should be equal to false, which look what just happened. The minute I put var show popup, that screen went away. So everything is looking pretty good so far. Okay? Problem being, though, is, well, how do I get the screen to reappear? I need to somehow figure out a way to get that show popup to change to true. And that is exactly what the delete button is going to do. When we hit the delete button, we're not actually going to remove anything. We're going to get rid of that. Instead, when we hit this, we want to update the context of that variable, a var show popup, and we want it to turn into true. Because now, when we do that, when it goes from false to true, what's going to happen is now the group 1's variable will turn from false to true. We should be able to see it because we put that variable on the visibility property. Because remember, group 1, on visible, it's always going to do whatever the variable is. So the minute we go here, the variable is set to false, which means we don't see this screen. But when I click on the actual delete button, it's going to turn to true, and watch what happens. Boom, it showed up. Perfect. We're almost done. We're almost there. Last thing we have to do is say, well, what do these buttons do? All right, well, if they click the yes button, that means we really do want to delete the actual record. So we want to, from the yes, we're not going to worry about its visibility right now. We want to change what happens to what happens when we select it. So on the on select, we want to put that code for delete, which was remove. And what is it removing? The student location record. But this time it's not this item. It needs to remove the record that we selected. So we're going to do that gallery thing. We said, hey, go look at that gallery we were just on, which was gal student location, and look at the one that I actually selected. That's the one that I want to be removed. And we should be in business. But now let's think about it. After we click yes, it's going to delete that record. It'll be gone. But this screen is still going to show. So how do we get the screen to not show? Well, after we delete the record, we say, hey, take that variable, change the context, change its value. So we're going to go update context, take that variable, which is currently at true, change it back to false, and that way we will not see this anymore, because once it changes to false, the visibility changes to false. So let's see what we've got here. I'm going to start this over from the beginning. I'm going to click up here. I'm going to click on Jack P. I'm going to say I want to delete this record. Okay, it gives me this screen. Are you sure you want to? I do. I'm going to click on yes. It's going to do its thing. This May 11th one should be gone in just a second. It's gone, and the pop-up screen is gone, because the minute it deletes it, it then changed the record of the variable to false. Pretty good, pretty good. Now we just have to do one last thing. So again, if I go to search students, I click on a name, and I click on delete, it brings this up. But what we don't have is anything for this no button. So let's get the no button working. It's one of the easiest things to do. We don't want anything to happen for no, except for the screen to then disappear. So we are going to, with the on select for no, let me make sure I get that right. For the on select, I want the variable, I want to update the context of the variable. So we go update context of that variable, show pop-up. It's currently true if I'm looking at the screen. I want it to go back to false. So I can go back to not seeing the screen. So we put it in here. And if all is well, let's click on no. And it's gone. So you've now just done your very first pop-up confirmation screen. And you might not be doing a student check-in app on your end of things, but now you have a use case scenario for it. I hope this was helpful. By the time you get back for our next session, I'm going to clean some of this up here, change some of our colors, make the buttons look better. That's something you can do on your side as well. Look forward to seeing you in session 5.